Well, hey, digital world and Emmanuel family, Pastor Ian here bringing you the Take 5, where we're just asking you to take a few minutes out of your week to follow up and to live out what we've been talking about each week. And so thanks for joining us today. This past Sunday, we're looking at the stages of Jesus' public ministry: to come and see, to follow and die, to go and tell. And this past Sunday, we looked at what it looks like to follow and die. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, quote, he says, when Jesus calls a man, he bids him to come and die. And that's really what we talked about this past Sunday. We looked at Luke chapter 9, where Jesus says, if anyone would come after me, he must first deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. And so Jesus even commanded us not only to die to ourselves, but to recognize that that's something we have to do daily. It's not about our preferences, our comfort, our will, our opinions. It's about God's will and God's purpose for our life. And so we're called as disciples to lay down our selfishness and take up His purpose, His heart for us as we follow as disciples. And so there's a verse that I didn't get to read this past Sunday that I think is so fitting to help us live this out. And it's found in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And here's what it says. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And the reason why I wanted to share that with you is because, I've always wondered why Paul says in this verse that we're to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice. Why not just offer our bodies as a sacrifice? And here's why. Because a living sacrifice is a tendency to crawl off the altar. And it's a reminder for us that we don't just surrender our lives once, but it's an act of surrendering daily. It's an act of capturing those thoughts and recognizing what it means to live in a way that's counter to our culture. You don't have to look far to realize that our culture is losing its mind. And part of Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, verse 2, talks about not being conformed, and some translations say to the pattern of this world, the pattern of thinking of this world. And I think that is so important as we talk about dying to ourselves, because the question we're wrestling with is, how is God calling you to die in following Him? How's Jesus calling you to die? Specifically, what parts of your life is He calling you to lay down to surrender to Him? And the reason I think that is so important is because when you see our culture, it's a powder keg. Like, they're just waiting for something to get upset about, something to blow up about, something to pick a fight over, something to campaign against. And maybe for you, you've got your own expectations or frustrations. And that's not just limited to our world. It's absolutely involving the church. And that's why I think this is so important, because we're in a campaign called Who's Your One that is all about praying for one person and looking at one person in your life that God's called you to invest in, to build a relationship with, to pray for, to share the hope and the truth of Jesus. But maybe before you ever get to that point, it's got to start in you. Maybe your one to start with is you. And how is God calling you to surrender your heart to Him? Before you think about how to lead someone else to know and love Him, maybe you've got to demonstrate that love in your own life. And it means you lay down your anger, your bitterness. We're called to bear one another's burdens. We're called to consider the needs of others ahead of ourselves. We're called to forgive as we've been forgiven. Are you modeling that? Are you living that out? That's what it means to die to yourself. Even as a church family, we're not immune to this, and we're called to be a counterculture, to live different from the world around us. One of the things we're trying to do to help us live that out is we've been evaluating our church structure. And so coming February 7th, we're going to a new worship time where we're going to have an 8 o'clock service, a 9:30 service, and an 11 o'clock. And we're so excited about bringing that 8 o'clock service back. That service is going to be a mask-only service. And I realize even in doing that, that can cause some frustrations or challenges for some of you. But here's what I want you to understand. This is why this is so important. Part of us making this decision is recognizing that there are some that are higher risk, some that haven't been able to come and experience worship together in person since March. And so we're really trying to meet those needs, and we recognize that for some of you, maybe wearing a mask is a frustration, or either you're not comfortable wearing a mask, or it causes physical issues for you, or you just don't feel like you should have to. And that's fine if that's where you land. There's a 9:30 and 11 o'clock service for you to gather and worship. But if you're coming at 8 o'clock, we're encouraging you, please wear a mask. That's a mask-only service, because we really want those that have been staying away or have been concerned or are higher risk. If they're able to come back, we want them to come back and gather. And then what that's going to allow us to do by going to an 8 o'clock, and 9:30 and 11 and making that 8 o'clock mask only, it's going to allow us to do away the registration. And that's another source of frustration for some of you. You felt like you shouldn't have to register, or you forget to register. And so that's going to go away. We're going to spread out over 3 services. It's going to help us to do that and be prepared for everyone without having to do a registration. But here's the thing. Maybe there's some decisions we made along the way, or even some of those decisions that have frustrated you or angered you. And as a result, you've quit coming. And so I just want to challenge you. I want to encourage you. We need you. Don't boycott the church. The one suffering there is you. And maybe you need to lay down that hurt or that frustration or that anger, and give grace and show grace. We can learn. Maybe we can get better. We're trying to make better decisions together, because we want to be the culture that God's called us to be. So that's our heart. We hope that you'll come and gather with us, for those that can come on campus. And we also know there's still some that are not ready to come back, not able to come back, and that is fine. We're going to be working on some real creative ways to connect with you in the digital world as well, through a new site, a new app. You're going to get to hear about all that, and so we're hard at work to come together as a church so that we can live out the commission we've been given to make disciples together. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you Sunday.